Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Today, I'm going to be talking with Dr. David Phelps. He's a nationally recognized speaker on creating freedom, building real businesses, and investing in real estate. He combines his professional and personal experience in dentistry to illustrate how the tactical and the aspirational work together. David helps other logical, rational professionals become dreamers, then strategically manifest those dreams into freedom. And that's a big deal for us. How you get off the treadmill is you get freedom. He authors a monthly newsletter, Path to Freedom, and hosts the Dentist Freedom Blueprint podcast. Freedom Founders Mastermind, which I've been to and spoken at, is awesome. And that's his Freedom Mastermind community. It's growing exponentially year by year. If you haven't heard about Freedom or Founders Mastermind community, we want to get you involved in the Founders Mastermind community as well as a result of this podcast. They provide pathways to freedom for many professional practice owners. David, it's a joy to be with you today.
Chuck, always a pleasure.
Yeah, we're excited about this. So today we're gonna jump right in on a topic we haven't discussed on our podcast yet. So I'm excited to get into this because I think it's very important. So what to think about before opening a second practice. There's a lot of things to talk about there. The first of which would be, should I do that?
Yeah, should I do that? And I think secondarily, Chuck, why should I do that?
If I do it, there better be a good why.
Yeah, because here's the thing, Chuck, is that people think that whatever one practice is doing, whether it's doing well or average, or maybe it's even well optimized, they think that a second practice is going to duplicate that. And the problem that we have to accept as people, I'm talking about dentists who have become highly educated in our craft, and we love the craft, and the craft is awesome, and it helps so many people. But being an expert in the craft does not mean you're a good leader, doesn't mean you've figured out systems and automation. When you're the owner operator in your own dental practice, you're there, you see it all, you know what's happening there, and you learn how to kind of wear all those hats. I mean, something you help people do in dental practice is optimize and get the dentist out of that seat. But let's say that person has not gotten to that level yet, and they're thinking that second practice, that's going to do it, that's going to double my net profits, and I'm going to start having more time with my family and all the joys of what I've been looking for, right? And unfortunately, that's a myth. It's a great dream, a great hope, but my point today with you, hopefully, is to get people to really think hard about that. It's not impossible, but for most, the path that they would take to go that route usually doesn't work out.
So why doesn't it work out? I think that would be the first question. That would, I've got this dream in my head. I'm looking at the numbers. This second practice is going to do this for me. Why? What gets in the way?
Yeah, well, again, in one's own practice, again, whether it's running well or halfway well, at least the dentist is there, and to his or her, detriment or the positive side, he or she may or may not be a good leader, but it's good enough, right? Whatever they're doing, it's good enough in that practice because they're there, and they are taking care of the patients and plugging holes in what normally would be a problem in most businesses. They're operating it. Now, you open a second practice, well, you, the owner of that second practice, now you own two practices, you can't be at both places at the same time. And that's where the problem I understand is the dentist wants to be now an entrepreneur. And that's a great mindset to have. I love it. But the problem is I say we because I was in the same place. So don't think I'm above all this. I'm right there understanding that we don't understand that just because we have good intentions, they don't lead to the actual promise of the product that we want. And so we have the second practice, but we haven't ever taken the time to really build our leadership skills. We haven't done what you talk about in your great books, and the one I love particularly is why employees are never a good idea. So we have a mindset of employees, and so we can make that sort of work, not really well in one practice. You try to duplicate the same lack of culture, teamwork in a second practice where you don't have that there. It's going to suck your time away. You're going to have less margin, less profit, and ends up causing a lot of stress in people's lives when they try to do that without the fundamentals being in place.
So I think one of the things you hit on there that's really important for practice owners or dentists to understand is practice number one, you can still be the technician and the professional and be focused on really great margins and the artistry of dentistry and get the rest of it done on the side as you do that. But if you decide to open a second business, I think what I'm hearing and what my experience has told me is you better be willing to immediately make the shift to, I am now a business person. And in fact, I will probably have less time to spend in the chair. If you're doing this right, you will have less time to spend in the chair. And are you prepared to make that switch both emotionally? Is that really where your heart is? Do you really want to become a business guy, or do you love putting your hand in somebody's mouth? I mean, that's why you got into dentistry. So do you want to become the business guy? Well, okay, great. That's one. But then are you prepared to be the business guy? Have you taken the steps? You went to years of dental school to find out how to be a dentist. What have you done to prepare for the other piece of it? It's not something that just happens because you've decided to make it happen. There is a real mental, emotional, and then material shift in the way you live your life out at work if you do that. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, 100%, Chuck. I think you nailed it there. The emotional side is certainly apropos to discuss. And I do think that, the majority of the dentists that I know today would love to be freer in being able to still perform dentistry at some level, but be freer to do it on their own terms. So they think, again, that by having second or third practices that they will automatically be able to elevate them out of the chair somewhat. The problem, as we both know, is that in those second or even tertiary practices, that thinking that, the quote associates will just do all the work is, again, a fantasy world. And that's a topic for another segment to talk about associates. But that's usually, again, the problem there is that we think we'll just plug and play. And if you don't have the culture systems, the ability to hire, bring on stakeholders versus employees, you're going to have this mill, and you've got associates that will come in and they'll be there for a certain period of time, and they go bad, like a bad apple, right? And then you get stressed out because now you are the dentist trying to perform and take care of patients in two practices instead of one, and you've doubled the overhead. The debt's going to be there, so you double the overhead, and you're trying to run both, and it's it just becomes it's a frenzy that feeds on itself, and until you actually get things under control, it's a mess. In fact, Chuck, and I know many dentists who have gone down this road. I'll open the second practice, and it doesn't take too long, maybe longer than it should, for them to actually come back and get good advice and say, shut it down or sell it. Get rid of that secondary practice. It's better, I think, Chuck, to better optimize what one has. So take what you have, the practice you have. Most practices are running way under capacity. We both know that because of so many issues within the systems automation, the communication, case presentations, the lead generation, what happens at the front desk, so many holes in that bucket that could be, if they were optimized there, the dentist could focus there, have that one practice to really optimize that one, get the profit margins up there, and then if they still think it's a good idea to go to a second practice, okay, maybe, but get the one practice really optimized. Don't try to build off of something that's poorly designed in the first place and think you're just going to double whatever you have. It just doesn't happen.
And you've got to be committed to being the business guy, not the dentist. I think that's important. As you were talking, I'm thinking of 4 different practices I'm working with right now, and 2 of them are looking at opening their first second practice. One of them, the third one, is in the middle of opening their second practice, and the other one has 3 practices and is looking to open their 4th. So they're all in different stages of this. And I can tell you that one of these guys who's looking at opening the second practice, we've convinced him to do exactly what you talked about: expand his existing location, put in 4 more operatories, do evenings and weekends, a number of things like that to expand on that one, and that will by itself nearly get him off the treadmill just by doing that one thing. He still has to pay attention to the business side, but he doesn't want to he doesn't want to get real involved in it. So he has someone in the practice who will be the business person for him. So if you don't want to do it, you absolutely have to have someone who wants to do it. But even expanding your own practice, it gets away from you if you don't want to become the business guy. You and I both know Craig Spodak. He's got 55 people in one location. He's a business guy.
Right.
He's in the chair 2 days a week at most, and the rest of the time he is running a business. And so I think that's so important for people to understand The guy who's opening his 4th practice, he's a business guy. He is in the chair once a week. He's never at 2 of the other locations, and he's got the secondary business person, not just a manager and not just an office manager, but a true business person who's taking care of this conglomerate now of 3 practices. It will now be 4. I think this is a strong message. I can't say you can't do it or you shouldn't do it, because I've seen people do it. But to your point, too often we just look at what we're doing with what we're very close to, geographically very close to in our own practice. We think, well, we can just do this another place. People haven't thought it through. The one practice that is going from 1 to 2, we've been working with them for 18 months, and and I just want to scare people. We've spent 18 months developing freedom maps, process maps for everything they do, developing their people, creating peer recognition kudos programs and survey programs and peer recognition teams and distributed decision-making models and all kinds of things that have to do with the business side of dentistry, so that when they open the 2nd practice, it runs just like the first one. And they have a business person. The doctors are sort of in the business side, but they have a business person who will be in both practices. Yeah, that's probably going to work. They have a very high chance of success, and that will probably be a lot of fun for those docs. But I love where you're coming from here is, let's look this in the eye, and maybe there's another way for you to do this. Maybe there's other ways for you to get off that treadmill than opening that next practice.
Well, and that was the case for me. And again, you're exactly right, Chuck. This can be done. It's been done before. But I think the thing that a lot of people fail to do is they fail to keep investing in themselves, in their business. We go through a lot of years of school. We pass a lot of exams and boards. And, you get finally through that and you think, boy, phew, I'm done. And now I can actually go live my life. Well, the learning only begins then, unless you just decide to stay stagnant. And who decides to do that in life? I don't know any of our great colleagues that ever say, I want to just be stagnant. But we forget that we invested all this time and money in a certain level of education. Now we're actually talking about an entrepreneurial side. Totally. Yep. And I love that. You do too. I love being an entrepreneur. But you've got to get help from other people who have already lived that life, whether it's in dentistry or I love it because you come from outside dentistry. You bring a wealth of experience that comes from many different industries, and you bring it to another business sector. And some people say, well, dentistry is such a special business arena. It just can't be done there, right? I mean, how many times do you hear that, Chuck? Well, it just can't be done because
my practice is unique. I don't know.
We're different. It's like, no, you're not. You just think you are. We just think we are. We don't know what we don't know. And to invest in the advice of other people, mentoring groups, coaching groups, if you want to be like them or somebody else that you believe has successfully done something, go figure out where they got the help. Get in groups with them. That's what you do with Got Summits. I mean, you bring people together that have mindsets about, and you get to determine with good questions of clarity. Okay, here's who I am today. I'm this dentist, and I'm in my solo practice, and I want more in life. Well, Chuck, you say there's different pathways. Here's path 1, 2, 3. Let's talk about all 3 and figure out what's right for you. And then with clarity, one can choose, okay, I like that path. And by the way, there's people around me that have gone down that path. I don't have to reinvent this wheel myself, and particularly make the mistakes that are always going to be made. Now you can mitigate those mistakes, mitigate the risk. And when you do get to a point where you've got a barrier, roadblock, something you're not sure of, you've got the backdrop of people that have already gone there, and it fixes the problem. So intentionality about what you really want, clarity about what that means to you, and the knowledge base of people who've gone down that road to let you know, here's what it looks like. Do you want to go down this path? Here's what you're going to have to sacrifice short term for a period of time. How does that fit for you and your family? And all the things that are important to you. These are the questions that people don't ever ask.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here with the laughter of recognition, having done this myself, because you're saying basically do what is right for you. There's a couple of businesses I did because I thought other people wanted me to do them, or I had pressure on me or whatever.
Yes.
Figure out what works for you, and then get what we call outside eyes. It's one of the 4 building blocks of a great practice is outside eyes. Who am I actually learning from? I violated this wholesale to begin with. Like you said, I built 12 businesses in 8 industries on 4 continents. I've been across the board. I'm now focused completely on dentistry because I want to be transformative in the world of dentistry. But I can tell you, for the first 5 businesses, I didn't get outside eyes. I was the classic John Wayne rugged individualist. Print a business card. I got this.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that. And I'd be waking up in the middle of the night in cold sweats. And what in God's name have I done? But anybody asks me, how's the business? Oh, the business is great. It's great. But we've got to figure out, A, what are we doing this for? Are we doing this because it's something we would love to do or because somebody's pressuring us to do it? And then get outside eyes. And I think of all the time I wasted before I actually started getting coaches and became part of masterminds. And it's such an invaluable thing. We're mammals. We're made to live in community. And the rugged individualist, the only place we play that out in all of life is in business. If you join a tennis club, you're in community. If you live in a neighborhood, you have barbecues. I mean, there's nothing we do in life where we say, I've got this, and we shut everyone else out. It's the dumbest thing I ever bought into was the rugged individualist. So I'm that proud guy, but I'm now a recovering John Wayne rugged individualist. And I can't tell you how much it's meant to me to have outside mentors to do that with.
It is absolutely the key. Something you said a minute ago, Chuck, which I want to just tap into, and you talked about, other people's, living for other people's agenda. So,
Yeah.
The worst thing about social media networks today is there's so much stuff out there, and people are comparing themselves, their lives or their practices, whatever, to other people. And we both know, because we get a chance to look behind the scenes, that most of that stuff is just blown up baloney. And people like to thump their chest. And when they talk about, I'm multiplying this or that, if you get to look behind the scenes, there's a lot of carcasses that are dragging behind them, and I don't like that about social media because people don't get the truth, and so they start feeling like they are less than. So it's
Yep.
the braggadocious people at less than, because this person's crushing it here and crushing it there, and I just give a warning to particularly younger docs who don't have the years of wisdom or experience, or maybe have not been able to associate themselves with wise groups of people that don't have an agenda on them, where they can really get good information. Just be really careful who you compare yourself to, and don't believe everything you see out there, because most of it is absolutely not true.
So I love it. And let me give you one that came into my mind as you were talking. One of those outside agendas that we get a lot of pressure on is the most recent ADA data on multi-location practices. You've heard this in the last year or two. They came out with this, I think, a year and a half ago. Something like 8% of dentistry is multi-location practices. So one person or a group owns more than one location. And within 3 to 4 years, it will be 38%. That is actually a fact. But what that means to too many people is, I better get to be where I own multi-location in order to protect myself from corporate dentistry or whatever we want to call it. I've got to have more than one location. So people, I find, are jumping on this bandwagon simply to protect themselves from something that may not actually be a problem. That's one of those classic outside agenda things. That is a terrible reason to build a second practice. And my opinion is, absolutely not necessary. Corporate dentistry will never take you from a position where you could have a single location. It's way different than the rest of medicine for a lot of reasons.
Well, you're 100% right. The reason we have corporate and multi-practice issues today is because there has been so much, and I don't like to use this word, but mismanagement of our solo practices. The efficiencies have been pathetic. You could open up a practice even 20 years ago and not even have a clue as to how to run a business. If you were a decent dentist, you could make it. Well, corporate big money saw this, and now they've come in and they've taken a different model. So everybody's afraid that, well, if I don't jump on that model. But we said it earlier in this podcast, Chuck, is that if dentists would focus on what they have and optimize, amplify what they've got, not be worried about what everybody else is doing, you can absolutely survive and thrive in this midst, because there's the differentiation. Which is great. I mean, let's face it. You can either go to Ace True Value Hardware to get good advice on something you're working on at home, or you can go to Walmart. I mean, it's a choice, and there's nothing wrong with either one. But when the population really wants to have the kind of care, and there's a segment of the population will always pay to get the best care and not go to the corporate where it's just a mill. If you segment yourself in that arena, you've differentiated yourself completely. You can absolutely prosper, and you don't have to follow the crowd.
So you said one word in there that I froze on: optimize what, or I guess a phrase, optimize what you have.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing that would keep you from ever being eaten up by anybody else. Dentistry is different. And if you simply optimize what you have, if you have simple processes and protocols in place with your staff from the front desk on through the accounting and the hygienist and the operatories, if you have simple processes in place, you have some decent marketing sense put into your practice. If you have a few business things that you put in place, there's nobody who will ever be able to get you out of that environment. I know I met Dr. Wayne Mortensen and his top leadership team came to our GOT summits. I know they're part of your Freedom Founders Mastermind, I believe. And the guy owns 150 plus practices, but even what they're doing is they're having local ownership and they're optimizing practices locally. They're figuring out how do we have best practices locally. If you have that kind of thing, you would never need to worry about anybody gobbling you up. So don't feel like you have to build a second practice to insulate yourself from what's going on. Figure out how to run the one you have and get somebody else to figure it out. Even if you don't want to get out of the dentist chair, get somebody who will learn the business side of this thing and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I totally agree, Chuck.
Yeah. Well, so I think that brings us to the idea of the question of what's the one thing you would have people do first? I think we've kind of reviewed, maybe this is a summary, but what's the one thing you'd have them do first before opening a second practice?
Yeah. Really get clear on your why. Again, find that person, that group, that coaching group, that mastermind group, or a person to really help you identify why you want to do it, and then have them give you the pieces of what it takes to really get there. Identify those, understand that, and then if you want to do it, then go forward with that knowledge in place. Most dentists don't have a clue. They just go do it because, well, I can. And because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. Awesome. So how do we find you? You got the newsletter Path to Freedom. You've got the Dental Freedom Blueprint podcast, which I'm a big fan of, and the Freedom Founders Mastermind community, which I'm a huge fan of. How do people find you and get into these resources and learn more from you?
Sure, Chuck. Thanks. Best place is just go to the main website, which is freedomfounders.com, and all those resources are available there. So thank you so much.
You bet. Well, we're excited to have you back. We're looking forward to it. Thanks for this little tidbit. Hopefully this will help somebody relax and do what they actually should be doing, not what they feel like somebody else should be doing. Thanks for being with us.
Excellent, Chuck.
If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gottsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.